pass that around. That's my Amber. My wife and I did buy a house down there last summer. For those of you that know Taylor Campbell in the second year, when she finished her second year back in December 20th, she and her fiance went and stayed at the house for a week. So if you want to go down there, you're welcome to use the house. All you gotta do is get there. So, the sympathetics to the GI tract, we've talked about this several times, as the thoracic splanchnics, greater, lesser, and least. They enter through the diaphragm, and they're going to synapse on the pre-aortic ganglia. The postganglionics then will catch a ride, just like the parasympathetics, on a blood vessel out to the organ. I'll tell you that you know of now two sets of splanchnics. Thoracic splanchnics, greater, lesser, and least. Those are sympathetics. You know about the pelvic splanchnics. Those are parasympathetic. There's also a group of lumbar splanchnics that you see here coming off of the lumbar chain ganglia. They're labeled on a subsequent slide. But lumbar splanchnics, because they come off of the chain ganglia, they're sympathetics. Doesn't really matter. You just need to appreciate that the thoracic and lumbar splanchnics provide the sympathetics through the pre-aortic ganglia to the abdominal organs. Now, this is something we can find today. Here's the celiac trunk right here. Well, actually, the celiac trunk's right there. Right below the diaphragm. You're going to see that you can actually find the splanchnic nerves coming through the diaphragm, and they terminate. The biggest ganglia in the pre-aortic area is sitting right beside the celiac trunk. And it's the size of a quarter. It's sort of grayish in color. It's flat. It sits right beside the celiac trunk. Those are the two celiac ganglia. They're the largest collection of sympathetic postganglionics in the pre-aortic area. Now, there are other ganglia associated with every artery off of the aorta. There's a superior mesenteric ganglia, inferior mesenteric ganglia, renal ganglia, phrenic ganglia, all these different, but celiacs are the biggest, and you can easily find them today. You can see how that plexus continues, there's a lumbar splanchnic right there. Plexus continues down the aorta and then divides into the pelvis into the right and left hypogastric nerves. And it's the hypogastric nerves, that's how you get sympathetics into the pelvic organs, and that's how you get parasympathetics out of the pelvis, S2, 3, 4, up to the inferior mesenteric artery. A little bit about the different viscera. We've talked about the different parts of the stomach here. You cut into the stomach, if you can do this today, cut a window into the stomach, and you'll see that it's rugated. That's the normal appearance, it's rugated. There's a disorder called atrophic gastritis, where it's a degenerative type disorder. The stomach is smooth. You don't produce hydrochloric acid, and they have all sorts of problems. But normally the stomach is rugated. There's one other thing in your body that's rugated, and that's your vagina. A healthy vagina, the walls are rugated. So when you're doing a pap smear or a pelvic exam, and you're writing up or typing up, you would say something like, external genitalia without lesions, no masses, vaginal walls pink, rugated, cervix is smooth, But when you say the vaginal walls are pink and rugated, that means that's telling you that there's enough estrogen to keep the tissues healthy. In menopause, the vaginal walls become smooth and not rugated. And they also become dry and sort of grayish. So those are some of the problems you deal with in a postmenopausal female. So rugated stomach and vaginal walls. The pyloric sphincter is here, which just regulates the discharge of the food bolus into the duodenum. In babies, in some babies, they have a hypertrophied pyloric sphincter. It's called pyloric stenosis. And as you see here on this ultrasound, here's the stomach right here leading into the pylorus. You see how wide it is right there? That's a hypertrophied pylorus. The pathognomonic, what's the word? Pathognomonic feature of pyloric stenosis is projectile vomiting in the baby. So they take the formula or breast milk, it's down there for a few minutes, and then all of a sudden they just bleh, and it hits the other side of the room. I mean, babies vomit all the time anyway, but it mostly just rolls out. But this is quite impressive how far they can toss it. The way you fix this is you just take under anesthesia, you just go down, put a scope down, and they take if this is the pylorus, they take a scope with a blade on it, and they just make cuts in the pylorus, the sphincter, to loosen it up. Yes, ma'am.
How do you distinguish between that and like acid reflux?
Well, yeah, just reflux is more rolling. The other pathognomonic thing about pyloric stenosis is that it feels like a walnut in the epigastrum. That's the telltale feature. It feels like a walnut. And then, of course, if you feel that walnut, or any kid has projectile vomiting, you ultrasound it. But so the two things about pyloric stenosis: the walnut mass, and the projectile vomiting. And by the way, this area right here, at the point of the costal edge, is called the epigastrum on the surface. So if I say, did you auscultate the epigastrum, it would be here. You hear the stomach gurgling when you do that. The liver anatomy is a little complex here. So this is what it looks like in the body. What you're going to do, as I mentioned, you're going to cut the left lobe off right there. Cut it to the left of the falciform ligament. Before you do, though, flip it up. If you lift it up from the bottom, turn it up, what you see is this structure right here. It looks like, in somebody's mind, an H. Looks like an H. So the different parts of this H have different functions. If you look right here, now what we've done here, by the way, this is not flipped up. This is just you come around behind it and you're looking at it from the back side. So there's the gallbladder at the bottom. There's the gallbladder up here. The gallbladder has a depression right there, which would be one of the parts of the H. Now, if you'll notice, here's the left lobe of the liver. There's another protrusion right there where the gallbladder sits. Between the gallbladder fossa and the fissure here, That protrusion is called the quadrate lobe. On the top of that H right here, that's the inferior vena cava. You have hepatic veins draining into the inferior vena cava. So this would be IVC. On the other side, there's Ligament of Aries, right here on the bottom. And on the top side is Ligamentum venosum. So Ligamentum Aries, Ligamentum venosum. What this used to be is the umbilical artery. I've already said the ligament of Aries is the obliterated umbilical artery, right? Well, you don't need that arterial blood going through the liver. We want to bypass the liver. And the way we do that is we'll take this ligamentum venosum, used to be a duct. Matter of fact, the whole thing used to be a duct. And we would take all that umbilical artery blood and just bypass the liver and dump it right into the inferior vena cava. We don't need the liver to detoxify anything because mom does that. So ligamentum teres and ligamentum venosum were the bypass around the liver. The H is called the Porta Hepatis. Porta Hepatis. There are three things in the Porta Hepatis. One is where the hepatic proper artery enters and divides into the right and left. Well, actually, it's where the right and left hepatic arteries enter the liver. The division happens before the artery goes, the hepatic proper goes into the liver. So the right and left hepatic arteries are found there. The other structure is one we'll talk about here in a minute, called the portal vein. And the last structure is the bile duct. Well, it's actually called, at this point, the hepatic duct. Now, if you want to call it bile duct, you can call it bile duct. It simplifies things. And by the way, when I mentioned common hepatic artery, proper hepatic artery, if you just want to call it hepatic artery, that's fine. However, when you're on your general surgery rotation, I would make that distinction. The common hepatic, once the gastroduodenum gets off, now becomes the hepatic proper. You don't want to just say hepatic artery to a general surgeon. Any questions? Pretty easy. By the way, the lobe up here between the hepatic veins and the fissure there is called the caudate lobe. I always remember which one's which by the magazine GQ, quadrate gallbladder. Huh?
I thought you were talking about the distinction between the quadrate and the caudal lobes.
No, it just
I got you.
which one, if I put a pin in that to identify it, you're going to see where the gallbladder was. GQ, that's the quadrate lobe. And the other thing that's interesting is that the quadrate and caudate lobes, it looks like they belong to the right lobe of the liver. They actually don't. They belong to the left lobe of the liver. So they're supplied by the left hepatic artery. the liver is really the only organ that regenerates to any degree, and you can remove up to 85% of it, still have normal liver function, and it will regrow over time. There was a article, I think in Sunday's paper, about a daughter of a man who was 70 years old. She donated part of her liver to her dad, and that's fine because it'll regrow. I mean, if you donate a kidney to your dad, it means you only have one kidney left. You better hope you don't wind up with kidney disease. But with the liver, it regrows. So that was kind of cool. Here's the portal triad right here. That's what that's called, the portal triad. Now, when you find this today, it's going to have a bunch of fibers around it. Those tough fibers are the autonomic nerves. They're going up into the liver. Here's portal triad right here. See, they call these hepatic ducts, and that's called the common hepatic duct. Once the cystic duct joins it, then it becomes the bile duct. But for simplicity's sake, just call the whole damn thing the bile duct, okay? Until you get on your rotation. So there's the hepatic artery, common hepatic, proper hepatic, gastroduodenal, right gastric, right and left hepatic, cystic artery. You should be able to find this very easily. Where is that located? Where? Not under the gallbladder. The gallbladder is over here beside it. It's located in the hepatoduodenal ligament, which is the free margin of the lesser omentum, which embryologically was the free margin or the end of the ventral mesenteric. Can we say that again?
Yes.
Slow down now. The triad is located in the free margin of the lesser omentum, which is also called the hepatoduodenal ligament. Embryologically, the lesser omentum was the ventral mesenteric. So the foregut ends here. Right? The foregut ends there. What is that space? If I put my finger behind that space, it's going through the epiploic foramen windsor. So in a surgeon, if you want to do take out the gallbladder, you're going to isolate the duct, the bowel duct. You're going to isolate the cystic artery. All you got to do is, once you open it up and you can see it today, you stick your finger back behind the free edge of the lesser omentum, and you've got the portal triad in your finger. The pancreas is a retroperitoneal structure for the most part. It's made up of the tail, which is down here by the spleen, the body, the head, and this little piece down here is called the uncinate process. The uncinate process. So here's the stomach up here. It feeds into the duodenum. The duodenum starts out as this C loop here. The first part of the duodenum is intraperitoneal. You can lift it up. But then the duodenum and the body and the tail of the pancreas are retroperitoneal secondary, so they're attached to the body wall. But the head is still moving, it moves around. Now, back in the embryology slides, I showed you the diverticuli going off the front form the gallbladder, the the gallbladder, and the liver. There's another bud that comes off, forms the ventral pancreas. And then I said there was a bud in the back. That's the dorsal pancreas. Well, when the gut rotated, if this is the ventral pancreas, this is the dorsal pancreas, when the gut rotated, one came to the other one, like that. So now what you've got is the tail, the body, the head, and the uncinate process. The uncinate process is the ventral pancreatic bud. And when it came around like that, when it rotated around, when the gut rotated and it came around, the superior mesenteric artery wound up between the body and the uncinate process. If you want to find the superior mesenteric artery, it's very simple. All you have to do is the stomach is going to be sitting right here, lift it up a little bit. You'll find the duodenum. It says jejunum. The duodenum is right there, right there. Find the duodenum, and the superior mesenteric is sitting right on it. That's a typo right there. That should not be jejunum. That's the duodenum. The duct system, the bile duct system, here we have the common hepatic duct, cystic duct, bile duct, drains into the C-loop of the duodenum. So when I say C-loop, it's because the stomach comes down like that. The duodenum goes like that. So this is the bulb, the C-loop, and then the part that goes across to the other side. And right here is the jejunum. So the head of the pancreas sits in the C-loop of the duodenum. As that bile duct comes down there like that, it picks up the ducts of the pancreas. They join together and empty into the duodenum is that little papillae right there called the ampulla of Vater. So when you open up the C-loop of the duodenum, you can find the ampulla of Vater. The ampulla of Vater has a little sphincter around it that you can't see, but it's always taught in anatomy. It's called the sphincter of Oddi. It's a muscular sphincter.
Is that picture inside the duodenum?
Yeah, this is inside the duodenum here. Now, also, if you'll notice over here in the pancreatic duct, there's the main pancreatic duct. It drains the uncinate process, the head, the body, and the tail. And then there's an accessory pancreatic duct that drains part of the head. When we do, when I teach you about embryology of the pancreas, I'll explain why you have those two ducts. But in the duodenum, the main pancreatic duct at the ampulla of Vater is always distal to the opening of the accessory pancreatic duct. You can see it right there. There's a procedure called an ERCP, endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreatography or something like that. The interventional radiologist or the gastroenterologist will pass the tube down camera down your throat into your stomach. They actually enter that ampulla of Vater with the camera and can go up in there and actually retrieve a gallstone in the duct. It's a very specific type of endoscopy. So this area is important for several reasons. Gallstones, the pathognomonic thing for gallstones is the 5 F's. F, like A, B, C, D, E, F. Fair, fat, female, flatulent, and fertile. Flatulent means pooty. It does.
What was the fit?
Huh?
What was the fit?
Fertile, haven't had kids. So fair, fat, female, fertile, flatulent. They're prone to gallstones.
So white, fertile girls who fart a lot? Is that what we're getting at? Fair, like fair skin?
Fair skin, like European. That's it.
Sorry, I like farting.
I mean, if somebody comes in and they have right upper quadrant pain, they vomit after eating Cane's chicken because gallbladder functions in fat digestion. And if they are the 5 F's, that's number 1 on your differential. There's gallstones there. It's not a maximum. But believe it or not, if you look around Oklahoma, there are quite a few people that fit that category. There's a lot of gallbladder disease in this state. One of the problems here is the pancreas. There's a lot of room around the pancreas. So when tumors grow and they grow against confined spaces very early on, the pain is what alerts you that something's wrong. The pancreas has a ton of room. It doesn't press on anything. Also, it's deep in the abdomen. It's all the way in the back. So it's hard, if you have a mass there, it's hard to palpate it. If you have a tumor in the head of the pancreas, remember the head of the pancreas sits right here in the C loop. Right there. If you have a tumor arising in the head of the pancreas, it can obstruct the duct, the bile duct. If you obstruct the bile duct, either with tumor or with stones or infection, then you wind up dumping bilirubin, which is a pigment, into the circulation, and you become yellowish in color. That's jaundice. Jaundice from a gallstone is very painful. Jaundice from cancer of the head of the pancreas is painless. So painless jaundice is cancer of the head of the pancreas until you prove it otherwise. Also, because if you look at where the superior mesenteric artery is, a cancer in the head of the pancreas or body, or even the uncinate process really, doesn't matter where, can occlude the superior mesenteric vessels, causing mesenteric ischemia. So if a person comes in, if your intestines are not ischemic, like dead ischemia, but just hypoxic. People present with I have a sour stomach. Something's not feeling right. I'm just upset down here. Something's not working right. That's a sign of hypoxemia of the GI tract. And if it's chronic, you better be looking for something going on here. A friend of my dad's kept going back to his doctor because something wasn't right here. And for about 6 months, he had him on Tagamet and double dose of Tagamet, put him on a Prilosec and Tagamet, and jacked around with him for 6 months before he suddenly became yellow. He was dead 4 months later. He missed it. So, if you'll see here, the 5-year survival for pancreatic cancer, there really is none. I've never known a person with pancreatic cancer, and I've known a lot of them, to live more than a year. because of these reasons here. You just don't find it early on. My brother-in-law died of pancreatic cancer, 30-something years old. It's just crazy. It's a crazy cancer. Diaphragm's pretty easy. It's a muscle, it's a somatic muscle, you control it, with a central tendon. It's attached at the costal margin all the way around, from the xiphoid in front all the way down to T12 in the back, so you know it's domed. In the back, that's where it gets interesting. You have different holes in it. You have 3 holes in it, 3 primary holes. One for the inferior vena cava, one for the esophagus, and the back one back here is for the aorta. These are called hiati, or hiatus, esophageal hiatus. Where it attaches in the back, you also have these tendinous things that form arches. There's a medial arch and a lateral arch. They're called arcuate ligaments. What runs underneath those, the medial ones, are the psoas major muscle. The lateral one is the quadratus lumborum. You can see that today in lab. What goes through these holes is on the next slide, but there are certain things that go through the muscle itself, like the greater lesser release splinting nerves. They don't go through one of these holes, they go through the muscle. The things that go through the holes, you can pretty much figure out what they are. What goes through the inferior vena cava? Nothing but the inferior vena cava, because there's nothing associated with it. What goes through the esophageal hiatus? Well, the esophagus. What's wrapped around the esophagus? The vagus nerves. The back wall here, what goes through the aortic hiatus? Well, the aorta, but also the azygous system is back there. Okay. And this is what you'll see right here. Oh, I forgot about the thoracic duct. These things go through the muscle of the diaphragm, not through a particular hiatus. This is an interesting thing. This is a hiatal hernia. So if the esophageal hiatus is lax, if it's lax right here, and the stomach, the cardiac region of the stomach protrudes up through it, then you wind up with a hiatal hernia. So normally that forms a sphincter there, but you can see that part of the stomach is up through there. And once that goes through there, you lose the ability to retain the stomach acids in the stomach, and they wind up in the esophagus, and the esophagus that's heartburn. You can easily see the hiatal hernia on this slide right here. Let me turn down the light. This right here is the gastric air bubble, right there. There's the fundus of the stomach. If you look right here, you'll see another white line right there. There's the different density right there. That's the hiatal hernia. And that's it. Any questions? Okay, let me take a break. We'll reset up and we'll start the next lecture.